This is The Healthy Healer, where true voice is your medicine. This is where we help doctors and other healers navigate through the challenging times by learning from the best minds in the healing industry. Laugh, cry, and be surprised. It's entertainment, education, and inspiration so you can continue to be the unique and amazing healer you were destined to be. Welcome to humanity. Welcome to The Healthy Healer with Dr. Fred.
Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Fred, and welcome to another amazing episode of The Healthy Healer. It's a place where we like to invite and welcome people who have had a run in life that has left them to become the healer they didn't even know that they were ready to become. Oftentimes, that is a route through obstacles and hurdles and challenges in life. And through that, these people, my guests, typically find their way to being extraordinary healers almost as a necessity, as an urgency, as a responsibility. And that's certainly the case with today's guest. There's an opportunity to get that there's an accountability in who Lana has now become to the world as a healer for so many. Lana Manikowski is our guest today, and Lana has a story that is unique for sure and likely to be very inspiring to all of you who listen to this and watch it if you're watching on YouTube. So off we go into an amazing conversation. Lana Manikowski, thank you so much for being on The Healthy Healer.
Thank you, Dr. Fred.
It's really great to have you here. So Lana, I like to start off my podcast with a simple question that I ask most of my guests. And I call it a 9-letter question, which makes it seem like it's not power-packed, but it is a very power-packed question that sometimes leaves my guests on their heels. I don't expect that's what will happen to you, but here we go anyway. Manikowski, who are you?
I am a healer. I am always evolving, and I am somebody who is full of abundance and full of pride about who I am.
So a leader, evolving, full of abundance and full of pride.
Yes.
That's really great. And let's talk a little bit about your always evolving aspect of yourself. Who are you as a healer that is always evolving? And when did the evolution in your world, as you look back, when did it start? Did it start on your arrival here at Earth or even before? Or was there a point in time during this existence that you think you actually began the cascade to being an evolving healer?
I think that there's 2 points to that question. I think there's an awareness of when I became a healer and an awareness that the minute I became Lana Manikowski in this form, I became a healer. And I would say I'd like to talk a little bit more about my awareness of it, because I think that's a lot of what we don't understand. And what I try to teach my students is how we can evolve and continue to evolve and not always think of ourselves as having to arrive to a place in our lives where we can finally feel full and feel abundant. And I think that's something that many of us, or maybe me individually, always thought I would get to a point where I would finally be proud of myself or finally feel like I've achieved something. And the greatest part, I think, about this journey that we're on is that every day is a new opportunity to continue to compound what it is that we're achieving for ourselves and with our daily lives.
And so we don't really arrive at the place that we're headed to very frequently. It's really about the thrill or the gift of the journey on our way in a particular direction. And in your case, there was a pretty rocky journey, it sounds, a journey that was filled with both pain and suffering, as well as wonderment and ecstatic discovery about how you became the healer that you've now become. And you speak a little bit about your students. Tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got to be who you got to be.
I'll tell you first about how I got to be where I am today. And I started a journey to become a mom when I was 37 years old. Prior to that, I had on paper done all the things that one would think were worth celebrating and the things that I was really proud of that I achieved in my life. But motherhood was something that I always thought that I wanted. And when I finally decided at 37 that I was ready to go on that journey, I was diagnosed with something called unexplained infertility. And there my journey began to seek this path of heartbreak, this path of desperation many days, this path of feeling incomplete as a woman, because in my mind, I saw my body not doing what it was supposed to do as a female to reproduce. And I went through a 7-year journey of fertility treatments at some of the best clinics and institutions in the United States. And when my journey ended up without children, I really found myself wondering what my purpose could be or what my meaning could be in this world as a female if I didn't have a child to have biologically created myself. And so what I do is to help women who, like me, are childless, not by choice, and are searching to create a life that they love without the children that they always thought that they would have.
Hmm. So your ideal client is someone, it sounds like a woman who has thought up until some certain point that to be whole and complete in this world as a woman, they would need to become, or that giving childbirth, a biologic childbirth, was access to becoming a whole and complete woman during this dimensional existence. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. And some women have given birth, but maybe they don't have their living child. There could have been a
Sure.
miscarriage or something of that sort. So, to be more specific, it's women who are trying to create a future without children.
Okay.
And they've chosen not to adopt and they've chosen not to have an egg donor. They're really trying to navigate and find their meaning and their purpose in this world without children.
Okay, but there is another group I just want to point to, which is there a group of women who don't have children who are happy with not having children that would not necessarily be a client of yours, or would that also be a group that you would be offering your services to?
So, though that distinction would be women who are considered child free,
Okay,
and the women that I work with are we identify as childless.
okay, very
Yes,
interesting. Oh, yeah, I
yeah.
get that. That's very interesting. So now, in that group, or in the group of the childless women, these are women who need to go, it seems like, who are destined to go through a transformational journey of learning that what they thought they needed or wanted or what would define their identity or purpose was not going to take place. And having to replace that perceived identity and future and purpose and vision with something new is something that you walk them through or you help them through in your counseling or in your coaching, or what is it that, tell us a little bit about how you do what you do.
I help women basically understand like, what they're believing about who they are right now without having a child, and maybe healing some of the relationships they have with their body. They many times women who have gone through fertility treatments or are childless not by choice have built this relationship with their body that they feel their body failed them. So really healing that relationship internally and emotionally with this beautiful body that still does so many wonderful things for them every single day, but somehow we allow this inability to have children outweigh the beautiful things that our body does for us every single day. So I help them work through that. I help them figure out that purpose doesn't always have to be attached to something outside of you, that you can have new purpose every single day. You can create purpose just by putting your feet on the floor and being the true, honest version of who you are. You're creating purpose in this world. So we do a lot of work on understanding that purpose doesn't always have to be attached to something other than you. And really beginning to understand how you want to fill your time and how you want to create a mark for yourself in your own life versus always feeling that you need to do something for others and do something that others recognize, but really how to build this relationship with yourself that you're proud of who you are and take a lot of pride in the person that you're being by being truly you.
That's fantastic and really aligned with a lot of the work that we've had through our Welcome to Humanity program as well. This idea of really coming to grips with what's so and then embracing all of it, including the pain and the misery and the suffering and the difficult or miserable times that might have been experienced at various points in our life, along with all the beauty and everything in between, all the gifts, all the magic, all the miracles, and all of that put together allows for the capacity to really see the beauty or the amazement of what we are as human beings walking around in this vessel that called our body, after all.
Yeah, I feel like we sometimes allow so much to be overshadowed. One or two things that maybe didn't go as we planned in our life seems to takes the wheel over all the things that we have accomplished and feel really proud of by being truly us. So
Yeah,
yes,
beautiful.
I get that.
So one of the things I want to reference, and I excuse my somewhat clumsiness as I do this, is the Torah or the Bible talks a little bit. There are some infertility cases, some high profile infertility cases in the Torah. Women of our forefathers, wives who didn't give birth for 90 years or for a long time, and then were blessed with a child late in their life, or felt like they were blessed with a child late in their life. Is there some sort of spiritual or religious component that you work into your life coaching, or do you might listen to what's coming from your client as to whether or not there's a spiritual component that can be injected into the growth and development of these women? Because it seems like it is referenced on at least 2 or 3 occasions where women weren't given the opportunity and then prayed to God or had something happen where they then were allowed or then given the gift of motherhood later in their life when it was least expected that they would become mothers. Have you ever worked that into your treatment in any way, or am I out on a limb a little bit here? In which case, let's
Well,
be back to the center.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I have the benefit of working with women from many different religious backgrounds. I have Muslim women in my practice. I have a Jewish women in my practice, Christian, Hindu. So I think in our individual faiths, whatever faith it is, there seems to be a lot of trigger points when women are going to their services or maybe doing verse readings or readings in their in their actual faith that is somewhat triggering to them because they're not moms. And they oftentimes tell me that they feel really disconnected from their faith because there is so much focus on women becoming moms, whether it was when they were 90 years old or earlier, when you think about Rebecca and all the different scriptures and the readings that I've read myself. And so I really try to stay out of focusing on a specific religion, but let the women bring to me what it is that they're working through in their own specific way. And me not having to be an expert in their faith or helping them read through whatever it is that they're believing in their scripture, but helping them recognize how they can really feel pride and feel connected to who they are as a woman, whether they've seen an example of themselves or not. Because I think that's really what women are struggling to see is somebody who looks like they do and seems to be thriving without children. And I feel like there's really a lack of that for women. So I help them be their first creation of that in themselves.
Very interesting. And you have a process. It sounds like you have a multi-step process, a methodology that you work. Would you care to share a little bit about what that methodology is and what you notice when you bring women on? It seems like when women show up at your door, they are generally in some pain and in some ways really asking or wishing for some form of healing. So when you get them in that first step, how do you warm them into the program and assure them that we're going to get them to the other side of feeling beautiful about being the woman that they really are, all things considered?
I think what many women don't realize is that they're in grief and they're processing grief, but it's hard to attach what they're feeling to grief because when we think of grief, we think about losing someone, we think about a physical tragedy of some sort. But when you're grieving a vision of somewhere that you thought you would be, but there's no tangible evidence of something being lost besides a dream, I think a lot of women are looking for this space to hold them, to allow them to understand that they can grieve something that never existed. So a lot of the work that I do is giving them that opportunity to recognize that they're going through the same emotions or their sort of emotions that someone might be who's recently lost a loved one.
Hmm.
So we do a lot of work around the grief process and also helping them dream again. Because I think a lot of women are really feeling lost because they always assume that the next, say, 40 or 50 years of their life after having children would be mapped out for them, and they'd be sending kids off to school, college, getting married, becoming grandparents. And when there's no opportunity for that, and you're the individual responsible for filling your years in the years to come, there's a lot of women I think that are trying to really figure out, like, what is it that I even want to do with my time, or what feels meaningful to me. So helping them create a plan for the future, helping them feel connected if they have a partner. I think there's a lot of women that fear if their marriage is going to be enough, if it's going to be as like fulfilling and feel as abundant to fill the next coming years of their life. So helping them work on their relationships and creating a relationship that they feel connected to, and one that they can create goals to continue to strive for in their relationship. And then, like I mentioned before, the body, creating a relationship with your body where you look at your body as a source of abundance instead of something that has failed you or you feel a lot of lack around. So those are probably the main highlights that we really focus on, and that the women that come to me are really not sure that they're feeling all that. But after our discovery process, we really have done some beautiful work
Yeah, I
together.
imagine that you have. I really appreciate that, and I can see it. I can see it emanating and oozing from you that you do beautiful work. So I truly appreciate the work that you do. I have another question here that comes from my personal experience. I have two children, and both of them are, I would say, my daughter is now considering becoming a mother, and she's 30, and I know that they're working at it. And my son is, I would say that he and his wife are child free by your definition. My wife is also child free, and she's 50, about 54 or so years old. And one of the things that all three of us share, me and my two children, is that we have a house full of pets. Like I have these three cats, and both of them have two dogs. And there's something that sort of triggers or satisfies my paternal urges, and certainly my wife's maternal urges, as well as the wife of my son and my daughter herself, in taking care of these pets in a way. Do you have children? No, but I have a few dogs. Some people answer that question, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you have children? No, but I got cats. I have some pets. As if it's a substitute, like an equivalent based substitute. Your thoughts about pets as somehow a surrogate for children, is that a healing idea, or is it something that maybe gets in the way of true and honest healing with oneself, as being the mother that never actually came to be?
I love that you brought this up because it is something that's really prominent, I think, for women who don't have pets and have gone through fertility treatments and didn't become moms. And I'll tell you my personal story, if that's okay. There was a long time during our journey where we wanted to get a pet, specifically a dog. And my husband and I were feeling as though it was a replacement for a child. And so we shied away from it because we had judgments about whether that was like a minor league thing to do, if you will, for somebody who wanted kids. So I specifically remember there was a time I was traveling for work and I was on business in London, and I came home and we had this, beautiful home. We live in Chicago and beautifully decorated. And I walked into this home and I never felt so empty. And it felt so like I had these material things, but there just seemed to be like no love in it.
Yeah.
And that was the day that I decided I was going to get a dog. And so I talked to my husband and we started our journey of becoming pet parents. And I have to say, Dr. Fred, I could not imagine my life without my dog.
Yeah.
And she has been she's been with us 5 years, and there is so much love that I feel like maternally that I'm able to give this animal, and so much that she gives back to me. And I really try to help women work through that because I think that we see ourselves as getting a dog as a consolation prize or getting a
Exactly.
cat or some sort of animal. And we see that as, yeah, that's good. You're embarrassed to say that you got a pet when you couldn't have a child. But
Right.
I have to tell you, my Coco, she's a mini Aussie Doodle, and she's probably screaming right now that she can't be on camera because she loves to be anywhere that I am.
Yeah, I understand. And I really appreciate your honest and candid answer to that because that's what's happening here as well. Sometimes I have, of course, have had experience with my two children. And so I am both. Neither of my children live home anymore, of course. They are spread out in Texas and Washington, respectively. And I now get to be a parent of these three cats. Now, I've always had cats, and one way, shape, or another. And the cats that we have now are so spectacular, and they leave me with paternal feelings. Again, this is a paternalistic thing rather than a maternalistic thing. But I see my wife holding the cats in the same way that the mother of my children held our babies and bringing in them to me so that I can love them or oogle them or admire them or pet them or soothe them or comfort them, just in the same way that it seems very similar to what used to happen when my actual human children were younger.
Yeah.
So we do get to share the growth and development of these three amazing felines, and it is something that activates the caring, nurturing nature of what it means to be a parent. Now, I can't speak directly, obviously, to what it means to be a maternal parent, but I'm not sure that this part of it is that much different. The idea is that we have a group of, or at least an entity of living beings who are counting on us to raise them effectively, to feed them, to care for them, to love them, to provide home for them, to provide safety for them. And that's a lot of the same things that we have to do or we choose to do with our children. So it's pretty interesting that you found Coco to be such a nice add-on in such a way that you can't even imagine life without her.
Yeah. It's been, I grew up with a dog when we were younger. In my elementary school years, our dog passed away, but I see just why they love animals so much. They really do have their own spirits. I do believe that they have a healing nature to them, and they can read us and provide us with things that we innately as humans, I don't know, have that same perception as some animals have.
Yeah, yeah, it's really quite beautiful. And there's this idea of some people have horses, and it seems like their relationship with their horse is also a really interesting human interaction. The soul of a horse is something that people can really relate to. And I don't have a horse, and I'm not a horse person per se, but I envy the people who do have horses. There's some of that same caretaking, like an older child, it seems, like a big child, like somebody who you get to care for, who also gets to care for you back, gets to carry
Mm.
you around. And it's almost like an adult child, I think, the relationship with horses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about this diagnosis and the people who might be your customers, who
Mhm.
might be your clients, or might be people who are interested in following or learning from you. You have this diagnosis of unexplained infertility. What are some other diagnoses, or what are some other places that women who might want to reach to you might find themselves? At what point in the intersection or in the sequence of becoming or attempting to become a biological mother does it become clear that it's not going to work out? And is that when you're accepting people, or do you also accept people when there's still a chance, when they're still on the journey of IVF working or something like that?
I work with women who have come to a completion in their journey to motherhood, and they know that the options that were available to them are no longer something that's going to bring them motherhood. And again, like I mentioned before, with choosing not to adopt or getting an egg donor, which is something I'd love to talk a little bit more about as well. But to answer your question, I really help the women who have gone through the journey. And my diagnosis of unexplained infertility is actually more common than you would think. And yes, that is a clinical diagnosis. And it's commonly for women who are more at advanced maternal age. But women who have endometriosis oftentimes can suffer from infertility. Women who have PCOS, polycystic ovarian
Right.
syndrome. So I would say those are probably usually the most common diagnoses, or some sort of autoimmune disease that just inhibit or prohibits them from becoming pregnant or keeping the pregnancy. So a lot of women are suffering through miscarriages. But there's just, I think, a lot of women who go through fertility treatments and maybe aren't educated that it doesn't work for everyone. And I think there needs to be more education for women to know that yes, the rates are high for a certain subset of women, but for me, entering fertility treatments at 37, my rates of success for a living birth were much less than somebody who's going into IVF, say in their late 20s or early 30s.
Mm.
And so I think that there's maybe a lack of education of how successful cycle can be. And also I think women, they don't know, they struggle when to stop and when to say, like for me, I went through 7 rounds of IUI, which is intrauterine insemination. And then I did 4 rounds of IVF, which is in vitro fertilization, of course, with some breaks in there as well to decide, was I ready for this? But I think a lot of women get attached to the outcome that they don't know when to stop. And it's a very costly process to go through IVF. When I went through it, I paid out of pocket at one of the clinics I went to, and the medications are out of pocket. So I think a lot of women could maybe use some more education about are you the best candidate for it? And if you're not the best candidate, just having some more honest conversations in the medical community to preserve the women from all this time and this attachment to whether they're a successful woman through having a successful pregnancy. Because the terminology is a lot of words are used to describe your cycles as a failed. So I'm considered a failed fertility patient. When you go through a cycle and you don't have a child after the cycle, it's considered a failed cycle. So I think a lot of women also start to take on this language of seeing themselves as failed because of the clinical terminology that we see in the medical field.
Interesting. Yeah. Terminology is so important in the medical field, and there's a lot of spaces in the field that use the same level of deceptive or disempowering language that leaves people unequipped to grow and develop in a transformationally positive way. So I appreciate what you're speaking to.
And then if it's okay, I'd love to talk a little bit about women having the decision to make whether they want to get an egg donor.
Yeah, we're just going to bring that up.
Or adoption, because there's a lot of, I think, judgment that women have on themselves when you tell somebody, the common question people ask when they meet someone new or maybe at a networking event is, oh, do you have any kids, or how many kids do you have? And it seems to be an icebreaker question, which for so long and to many people probably seems very benign. But as somebody who doesn't have children, it can be a really uncomfortable question to answer, because there's this feeling that you're judging or being judged if you don't have kids, or maybe people will probe a little bit and say, oh, you don't have kids, you still have time, but they don't necessarily know your journey or what you've been through. And so some of the work that I do with my students is helping them to decide, how do they want to answer those questions? And for me, I just say a simple no and pause. And some people will just not answer, but some people will be like, oh, how long have you been married? 14 years. And then there's a silence and a pause. But I think there's a lot of work that I personally have done and I help my students to do, to feel okay when somebody says, well, you can always adopt. Or my sister's aunt's cousin's best friend had a child at 63, and you're like, okay. There's a lot of people that I think with the best intentions probably want to give you hope or make you feel comforted in some way. But we really work on feeling pride about your decision to stop when you did. And if you chose not to adopt, you're not a bad person. That adoption isn't for everyone, and you're not a loving person if there is a child who needs a home, but you're not the right person to take that child on. And then also with egg donor, there's a lot of women that just want to have their own biological child. And it's not just as easy as you may think that you're going to get a donor egg and get pregnant. So I think there's a lot of work that women really are trying to just find their right wording, or maybe find this comfort level to meet new people and be at these networking events or at a work social event and feel comfortable telling their story or not telling their story and believing that they're worthy of their answer.
Yeah, beautiful. That's really great. And thank you for doing that as well. This idea of equipping people with a language that supports their empowerment and their independence and their sovereignty and their agency and their beauty is a task that most people don't take on. And we really get the power of language here to create who we know ourselves to be and the future that we're stepping into. So I really appreciate your willingness to take that on, and then the graceful nature that you use to bring that forward for these women. So thank you for doing that. Lana, if people want to work with you or follow you or learn about you or maybe hire you or learn what it would take to be a client or a student of yours, where do they find you?
My website is lanamanikowski.com.
Okay.
I also have an active Instagram account. It's lana.manikowski. And then for in person, I founded something called the Others Day Brunch, and that takes place here in Chicago the Saturday before Mother's Day every year. And this event is an in-person event that welcomes women who either don't have children, or maybe they've lost their mom, or don't have a physical connection with a mother figure in their life, and they're feeling some sort of sadness. The event is always the Saturday before Mother's Day in Chicago, and it's a beautiful time to come visit Chicago if you haven't been.
I have been to Chicago. That's where I went to school. So I love downtown Chicago. I went to Northwestern down on Lakeshore Drive. And
yeah, my mom went there too. Evanston.
Yeah, Northwestern. No, mine was downtown with the.
Oh, okay. Med school.
Yeah. And so, anyways, I love Chicago, and I'm glad that you're there and representing. It's probably my favorite city in the country, and I really appreciate that you have your event there and you have your schooling there and the in-person the weekend before Mother's Day. So there you have it. Lana Manikowski is here, and she has shared with us her trials, tribulations, hurdles, and obstacles that she had on her way to becoming truly an amazing healer, teacher, facilitator, leader, and mentor for you maybe, or for people, or for women who have now find themselves maybe a bit disoriented or disgruntled or dissatisfied perhaps with learning one way or another that they were to be childless, and want some assistance in taking on how again to find empowerment, beauty, grace, and love, and self-awareness and appreciation for life in a way that maybe wasn't the way that they thought life was expecting to go. So thank you, Lana, for being here. It's been a pleasure to have a conversation with you, and I look forward to future contacts with you, and anything I can do to help move your business or your project or your passion along, I'd be glad to be of any kind of assistance I can. It's been a great pleasure to have you on The Healthy Healer.
Thank you, Dr. Fred.
Yeah. And listeners, if you like this show as much as I liked having it, please feel free to share or comment and subscribe. That's what gets people like you able to listen and be with these amazing guests that we bring on, such as Lana Manikowski. And I thank you for being on for the show, and we will catch you on the flip side. Bye for now. Love you.